Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Living Well or Trying to. I'm your host, Janet. Before we get into today's episode, I want to share a little note. So back in episode 41, when I relaunched, I talked about how I was planning to release every week in the month of May and then move to every other week in the summer. I just wasn't really sure of what the workload would feel like when I actually did it and what my capacity would be. And honestly, it has been a really big project relaunching this podcast. I've talked about some of the logistics and production issues in episode 41, but I think the bigger challenge for me has been the mental hurdle of not comparing myself and this show and these episodes to what I was able to create at Asian Boss Girl with a full team of people and with co-hosts who have skill sets that complement mine, who are able to do things where I'm lacking. And so it's just been hard to not constantly be comparing everything that I'm doing with this show to what we were able to accomplish as a team at Asian Boss Girl. I think also, in addition to that, getting down the branding and the direction and the topics and all of that for the show has also been kind of a back and forth in my head. I don't know how it's coming off to all of you. I'm curious. I kind of came with this rebrand, added the tagline, had this whole trailer, but I'm constantly going back and forth in my mind about whether it feels authentic or if it's right. And I think some of that comes from a place of just me as a person going through a time of transition and going through some changes and trying to reestablish myself and my voice after 7 years of podcasting with a very established and specific brand and show and co-hosts. So that's just kind of a note, I guess, a little thing to share with all of you about what's been happening in my mind in the background as you've been seeing episodes come out in May. But all of this was to share about how I do feel like now that I've done this for May and I was able to get out 4 episodes, I want to be able to continue for the summer months to bring you weekly episodes. But in order to do that, I am going to have to break up the guest episodes, interviews that I do into 2 parts. So you saw that with episode, 42 and 43, where I interviewed Yue about dating. She runs a podcast called Dateable. And in today's episode, you'll also see it's a part 1 with a part 2 coming out next week. That's just something I'm going to have to do in order for this to be sustainable, where I as one person can bring you weekly content. And then I'll also be doing solo episodes, which I've already done a few, but I'm, playing around with the idea of maybe doing some Q&As and all of that. So if there are questions that you have for me, if there are guests that you would like me to have on the show, if there are topics that you want to request, I would so appreciate that, because like I've shared, I'm kind of trying to do this as a one-woman team and would love to get some of your feedback. So you can send me a message at livingwellwithjanet@gmail.com, or if Instagram is more your thing, definitely is mine. I'm on there all the time. You can DM me at Janet, the word double and the letter U. I think that covers all of the notes for the show. Let's start talking about the episode that you're going to hear in a couple of minutes. Today's episode is about astrology and horoscopes. Now, if you are here because you know me from Asian Boss Girl, you know that I love astrology and horoscopes. It is just something I find super fascinating. Definitely not something that I look at as absolute truth, and I don't look at it religiously, but I think it is such an amazing tool for self-awareness, for inspiration, but more than it just being a personal interest, I have noticed, and this is something we talk about in the show with my guest, a general trend towards astrology becoming a lot more popular in the last couple of years. And I think it's alongside this trend of spirituality just getting bigger in general as well. When the state of the world is the way that it is, when people are going through so much constant change and it feels like sources of information that used to be reliable are not anymore, I think people generally turn to spiritual practices. They turn to alternative answers. And so, yeah, that's kind of another reason why I thought it would be great to have an episode where we talk about this. Now, the guest that I have is really cool. Her name is Aliza Kelly. She was connected to me through our mutual Spotify partner program. She also has a podcast called Horoscope Weekly, so you should definitely go check it out. But let me tell you a little bit about her. Aliza is a best-selling author, and she's also a media host known for her regular column in New York Magazine's The Cut, and she's also the resident astrologer of Bumble. She has appeared in numerous publications and TV shows, including Vogue, The New York Times, Today Show, E!, Jimmy Kimmel Live, and The Drew Barrymore Show. She also hosts her own podcast, Horoscope Weekly, and she specializes in giving detailed birth chart readings about different aspects of one's life. You can check her out on Instagram. She has done some amazing celebrity readings for like Bella Hadid, Jonathan Van Ness from Queer Eye. Love that show and love him. So yes, in this first part of our conversation, we talk about how she got into astrology. We talk about the specific type of astrology she practices and why she also thinks astrology and spiritual practices are so popular in media and in the world in general at the moment. So I hope you enjoy this episode. It's a great one, and give it a listen. Let's go. Ta-da! Welcome back to another episode of Living Well or Trying to with Janet. Today's episode is going to be about astrology and horoscopes. I am so excited. I have Aliza Kelly here with me today. Aliza, I know that this topic is something that I'm personally super interested in, and also it's gotten more popular just in general in pop culture, right? But there are probably still people out there who are non-believers or find it a bit niche. And I know we're not here to try to like convince anyone of anything, but I do want to spend a little bit of time today talking just a bit about the background of astrology and getting to know you and how you got into it. And then also talking a little bit about astrology and how it's applied to like world events that are happening right now. And then I want to do a birth chart reading, which is going to be the fun and exciting part.
I love it. Yeah, it's all fun and exciting for
Yes.
me. Thank you so much, Janet. I appreciate you having me on your show. Living Well and Trying to is definitely like the TLDR of how I got into astrology.
Yeah.
So yeah, of course. I mean, I think for most people, astrology comes through as a tool
Yeah.
for helping understand who we are, how we
Yeah.
exist in the world, what our timing looks like, how we can enhance certain qualities that we have, and how we can work through the challenges that we're also facing. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, before we get into all of that, I do like to ask all of my guests what is a current wellness practice that they're really into. So, is there anything that you're doing right now, wellness related, that you're really loving?
Well, I guess it depends on when this episode airs because I'm actually going to be starting a yoga teacher training, which is really exciting.
Amazing.
And it's something that I have wanted to do for over a decade.
Yeah.
And it's expensive and it takes up time in the schedule. But I just like really got a strong download that I need to do it now, that it's like the time is now. So
Yeah.
I am going to do it. So depending on when this airs, maybe I'm in the midst of my deep journey through yoga teacher training,
Yeah.
or maybe if we're not there yet, I have an 18-month-old daughter, so I don't really feel like I feel like for me, my wellness practice is magic in the mundane. It's
love
being as present with her as possible.
Yeah.
I try to not have my phone around her or be on my phone when I'm near her, which
Yeah.
is like torture considering the
Yeah.
fact that I work on my phone.
It's so hard to do that
yes,
balance.
and
Yeah.
I'm addicted to my phone like
Yeah.
all of us are. But it has absolutely over this past year and a half, I've really retrained my relationship with my phone.
Yeah.
I even left it in the playground today. So
Oh.
just as a true testament to how
Yeah.
present I am with her. So I would say it's about magic in the mundane.
I love that. That is something I've been personally trying to focus on as well. So, but I'm curious, if you do the yoga training, is that going to be like in the States? Are you traveling anywhere for that?
It's going to be
or-
in the States.
Okay.
Yes. It's a program that it's like a Wednesday evening and then one intensive weekend per month. So it's going to take
Okay.
me 6 months to complete. But yeah, I'm really excited. I think that it's, I've been in my work, I've really the cognitive aspect, the
Yeah.
spiritual, the soul aspect, all of that I have on lock, but the
Yeah.
physical aspect is something that I'm really excited to integrate into my work
Yeah.
because it is, of course, it's a mind, body, spirit, but your body is a vessel and a
Yes.
temple for so much. And to sort of like actually learn different techniques and to work with teachers who can facilitate that connection,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
is really going to unlock a lot in my work.
Oh, I'm so excited for you.
Yeah,
That's
thank
amazing. Yeah.
you.
I love yoga. I've considered going into some sort of like a teaching program. Every once in a while it comes up, but I don't know. Something about it doesn't quite feel right to do
Yeah.
teaching. I think I love practicing it. And sometimes I think that, or definitely I know that the practice of teaching it is so different.
Yes.
It
I'm not
changes
sure
your
if I'm going to be a teacher.
oh, but
I
you
don't
just want to
know.
kind of
Yeah,
like
I'm
immerse
not.
yourself in that.
Yes,
Yeah.
I don't know if that is ultimately like if I'm going to teach yoga classes,
Yeah.
even though I low key have always wanted to teach a yoga class just so that I can control the music
Oh.
because because I'll be in class and be like, this song sucks.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
I had the aux, we would be listening to whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
listen to. So that's really like my number one incentive for
Mm.
actually teaching a class is to
Yeah.
control the playlist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. I would love to learn. I think we kind of started talking about this a little bit already, but just like, how did you get into the work that you do?
So I started over a decade ago. I mean, it's like as years go on, it's like a decade and a half ago. It's like
Yeah.
time is
Time is
moving,
flying.
and I'm not getting any younger,
Yeah.
but I feel youthful still. Um, I started to look at astrology when I was in my early 20s,
Mm.
and I was living here in Los Angeles. And I was theoretically doing exactly what I wanted to do with my life. At that time, I was working in the art world. I
Mm.
was working in a gallery, traveling the world with the gallery. And, I was really on a path and on a track that I I had hoped to be on. It was
Yeah.
theoretically a dream come true. And I was so incredibly unfulfilled.
Mm.
I felt so lost and so fragmented. And a lot of people at that time, at that age, feel those things. But
Yeah.
me, I really wanted to figure it out. I
Mm.
wanted to solve the riddle of what was happening. And I wish I remembered, like, specifically, the first thing that I Googled or the first thing that, like, sort of like crossed my psyche around astrology. I
Yeah.
can't remember specifically, but I remember finding out that I was a Pisces moon
Mm.
and always knowing that I was a Leo sun, feeling very Leo sun in lots of ways, but certainly not feeling like that was the everything to my
Mm.
experience.
Yeah.
And then discovering I was a Pisces moon was a profound experience for me
Mm.
because, and for any listeners who have Pisces placements or maybe a Pisces moon, it's a very deep and very emotional placement to
Mm.
have. And it's, there's a lot of intuition, there's a lot of sensitivity, and there's a lot of heaviness, and at that time I was deep within the heaviness of it
Mm.
and seeing that I had both this, very fun and passionate and theatrical Leo sun, but on the inside there was this whole other storm,
Mm.
and a whole other set of needs that I had to tend to
Yeah.
was really like a mind-blowing discovery.
Mm.
And through lots, at that time, I kept going deeper into this work. A friend of mine was also really interested in astrology. We, being the 23 and 24-year-olds that we were, decided to start an astrology dating app.
Oh,
So we launched an
wow.
astrology dating app. I know, which was operational from 2014 through 2016. In 2016, when we closed our company, I moved back to New York and basically had to start all over again. Like
Oh,
I was
wow.
miserable and broke when I first found astrology. I lived in LA, had this whole arc around this astrology dating app.
Yeah.
Came back to New York even more broke and confused and lost. And I was like, well, what the fuck
Yeah.
was that? Like, why did I just go through all of this? And thankfully, my teacher, who I had been working with as I was developing this company, lived in New York.
Mm.
We knew each other because we're both from New York. And she was like, don't give up on this. You're really
Mm.
good at it. And there's a reason that this is speaking to you. And
Yeah.
her name is Annabelle Gatt. We still work together. she so graciously invited me. She was basically hosting these like salons out of her apartment in Green. Where? Oh my God,
Greenpoint, Brooklyn?
Green. Yeah.
Yeah.
My brain just exploded. And I would go to her apartment and there would be other people there from all different like walks of life learning astrology. And I basically went every single day to this apartment, to these like salons that she was hosting.
Yeah.
And I was so immersed in it and found myself sort of like experiencing a whole new spiritual renaissance around it, because prior to that, what I was learning about was I could only go as deep as I was willing to go.
Yeah.
And that's like with all wellness work, right? And then sort of tail between my legs, everything falling apart yet again, not knowing where I was going to go, being older at that point, being 26, 27, it was like, wait, I want to go even further with this. And that is where I really, really honed the skills.
Yeah.
And then I still had to support myself. 2016, 2017, I had another shitty job that I hated. I was still going over to the salon, studying.
Yeah.
And then one day I got laid off from that job. And I felt like it was a very strong message from the universe. Like, you got to go in, you have to give this a try. And that's what happened. That's the journey. So I've been doing this now my entire adult life.
Amazing.
And I've been doing this full time for 8 years. Never having looked back since the last job that I got laid off at.
Oh my gosh, that's such an incredible journey that it's taken to get here.
I know. It's crazy. It's really crazy. Because, well, no one goes, I mean, maybe people today will, but like nobody thinks they're going to be an astrologer when they grow up,
Right.
And for me, I had this whole battle around like, is this what I want to do? Is this the type of is this the way that I want to be experienced in society, in the world? Because obviously people are going to think that I'm kooky. People are going to think that people aren't going to take me seriously. People aren't going to necessarily respect this work. Am I brave enough to endeavor a life where people are going to question me and challenge me basically at every turn?
Yeah,
And
that is so real.
And the universe sort of said, yes, bitch. Like, do it. And I listened and I'm grateful for it. But that is also true to my experience. I am questioned and challenged and I'm sure pigeonholed and sort of like stigmatized on every turn because of this work as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think as mainstream as like wellness has gotten in general, there is still a bit of that like veil around it, right? For a lot of people in all realms of like wellness or spirituality, there is kind of that type of, I don't know, way or lens to look at it. Even with like, for me, like new media with podcasting, content creation, that is something that there is an industry around, but it's still fairly new. And sometimes there's this like idea of like, how confident are you in taking this path that feels less traditional? Because I didn't grow up being like, I want to be a content creator. At least for me, I'm almost going to be 40. So this is something that's like this very different in terms of career.
Totally.
But going back to like horoscopes and astrology, could you talk a little bit about like what, like maybe for the people out there who are less familiar with it, and we're not trying to like convince anyone per se, but just talking a little bit about how you do think about it and what makes it real to you, and like what are ways that you use it and apply it?
Sure. So astrology is amazing. It's an ancient system. Every ancient culture has their own astrological system and their own way of having interpreted and translated the stars and the planets. So I practice a system that is Western tropical astrology, which is really, a lot of it is rooted in Greek and Roman mythology. And it uses the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn to sort of anchor our perception of the sky. So it's different than, for instance, Vedic or sidereal astrology, which looks at the stars from a different perspective. So sometimes, if you have your chart read by an Indian or Vedic astrologer, they'll be like, oh, you're actually a Libra sun, and I'll interpret it as a Virgo sun. One is not right and the other is wrong. It's just two different systems for interpreting and looking at the planets and stars.
Yeah.
But why astrology is amazing is that somehow, these practices are brought to life by the interpreter.
Mm.
And mystical, spiritual interpreters are often on the same wavelength. Even if we see different things or we call different things, we have different names for different things.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
ultimately, our sort of interpretation will be in alignment
Yeah.
most of the time, which is kind of just like part of the magic of it,
Yeah.
So astrology is a system. There's many systems. The system I use is Western tropical astrology. And a lot of what I do is look at and interpret where the planets are, either in someone's birth chart, which is a snapshot of the sky at the moment they were born. So it's every single planet and point, asteroid, comet that we
Mm.
have meaning and symbolism around. And then I sort of tell the story of who that person is. And we also can look at, what's going on in the planets in the sky on a specific day, today, any day, a day that something important happened,
Yeah.
like this, there's always a birth chart. There's always a record of what the sky looked like.
Mm.
And astrologer's job is to assign meaning to it.
Mm.
So I think that astrology is an art form. I don't consider it a science personally. Which I feel, especially in like as we move towards this like very anti-science
Mm.
era that we're moving in, like I
Yeah.
think that calling things a science and calling things an art, like it's important to have these classifications because art is just as valid as science, but it isn't science.
Yeah.
So astrology is a storytelling,
Mm.
it is an act of storytelling and understanding self through this incredibly mystical and celestial lens.
Mm.
So, astrology allows us to get to know ourselves better by understanding who we are from this 360-degree perspective. We can see all of the different nuances and components and details of our selfhood,
Mm.
which give us permission to externalize differently than we internalize and to move through different spaces in very different ways, right? Like we can sort of be in spaces where we feel like we're really thriving and we're like, oh my gosh, this is so in alignment with what I want to be doing. And then we could
Yeah.
be in other environments where we're like, oh shit, this is draining my energy.
Yeah.
And astrology gives us a language set for all of that. It
Mm.
also gives us really powerful information around timing and cycles in our life.
Mm.
And this is something that I work with a lot, especially horoscopically. And when we're talking about sort of like what's going on, for example, with the United States, like
Yeah.
what's going on in the world right now, like astrology can speak to those things. And it also is this beautiful reminder that everything is a phase,
Mm.
everything is in motion, nothing lasts forever. And when we're going through a difficult time, either societally or individually, like there's going to be changes to that,
Mm.
right? This isn't going to be something that just stays static exactly as it is. This is going to be something that like is in flow.
Yeah.
So, yeah, those are the ways that I work with astrology and I think that it's real because it is real. Because we make it real and we
Mm.
assign meaning and value to it and
Yeah.
it changes people's lives. It's changed my life. It's changed the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that I've worked with over the years' lives.
Mm.
Um, Astrology is a tool for confidence building, for cultivating courage, for
Mm.
cultivating self-empowerment. And if those things really happen, then it's real. So to
Mm.
me, like that's the efficacy of this
Yeah.
practice.
Oh my God, I love the way that you explained that, especially being able to separate art and science so that people are not looking at this as like it is supposed to be something that you are like predicting in a very literal way.
Yes.
It's about assigning meaning, it's about using it as a form of guidance, as a form of inspiration.
Yes.
So I really love that.
Thank you.
But I guess if we could talk a little bit more about, I thought it was interesting that you talk about like how it can be applied to like world events. What are some of the, I guess, like looking at the world through the astrological lens? Like, could you talk a little bit about that given how crazy things are right now?
I sure can,
Yeah.
Janet. So, how do we begin? So, the United States is 248 years old, and Pluto, which is the planet of destruction, transformation, death, and rebirth, goes through a cycle that's exactly 248 years old.
Mm.
So, Pluto is at the place that it was at the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And we are currently experiencing what is called for the country a Pluto return. So when a planet returns, maybe listeners know about the Saturn return, which happens when we're about 30 years old, 29 and a half. And this is like a rite of passage around maturity, growing up, really becoming who we're meant to be. No person is going to experience a Pluto return unless apparently they're like Kris Jenner, because it's 248 years. But a country certainly can. And I think it's very interesting that when if you Google, like, how long does an empire last? It's
Yeah.
250 years, right? So we have this really wild thing that's happening that we all happen to be here for right now,
Yeah.
right? We are the only generation in America to experience this massive reckoning for the United States. And you don't have to be an astrologer to be like, feels like a reckoning.
Yeah.
Like, feels like things are really reaching a fever pitch right now.
Yeah.
In addition to that, that's not all.
Yeah.
We also have Neptune having just moved into Aries, which Neptune also has an incredibly long orbit. It's about 140 years long. So the last time that Neptune was in Aries was during the Civil War. It was actually the
Mm.
first day of the Civil War was when Neptune moved into Aries in the 1860s. So Neptune, the planet of sort of illusion, is now in this fire sign that is all about like fighting for what your convictions are, fighting for what you believe in. Um, Uranus in July is going to be moving into Gemini. The last time that happened was 1941, which was also World War II. Like,
Mhm.
I'm not, and when I say all of this stuff, it's truly not to like scare anyone or make anyone feel like they need to build a bunker.
Right.
It is because we are all alive right now at a really rare and special point in American history where, like, what do they say? Like, the chickens are coming home to roost kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like this country is built on bullshit.
Mm.
Obviously, we know that, it's built on the backs of oppressed people. And I think that we're seeing sort of like the infrastructure really starting to show itself as being a space that has never really been inclusive, that has never really been uh, sustainably democratic. And having the sort of like final boss moment, as it feels,
Mm.
of like what the United States looks like there's no doubt that over the next 7 years, I say seven because that's Uranus in Gemini,
Mm.
how long it'll be. The United States is no longer going to be sort of like the central world power anymore. And that's wild to think because at least for, the last 100 years or so, the United States has sort of positioned itself in this way. But yeah, I mean, as it relates to these world events, it's really, it's a very powerful time to be
Yeah.
alive. It's a powerful time to be present and to be witnessing such huge change happen on a national level, on a global level. Um, and astrology is amazing because, astrologers have been sort of like telling us to watch these dates
Right.
for a really long time. I remember over 10 years ago learning about, these upcoming transits and being like, it's long enough away that I don't have to
Yeah.
worry,
Yeah.
like it's long enough away that I'll cross that bridge when I get there. And here we are,
Yeah.
and when I say even worry, like we should obviously all be vigilant and aware and responsible people, but like this is really an opportunity for us to reshape this country and government in a way that is going to be hopefully actually, positive for people, where people
Yeah.
have like a fighting chance to live a good life.
Mm.
And it's scary to have to burn systems down to rebuild them, but we're all built for it, like we're
Mm.
here for a reason. We're here because we can handle it. So that's also like something that we should find empowerment through is
Yeah.
recognizing that we're alive at this time because we have what it takes to navigate it.
Mm. I really, really love that because I feel like so much of the rhetoric out there is much more fear based and kind of like angry and sad and all of that. But the perspective that you're bringing is one that's like really inspiring and like positive, and that's what I'm all about. So I love that. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing.
I mean, it's if we don't have like I feel like why shouldn't we be excited about the revolution, you know? Like if we need a revolution,
Yeah.
you know, like look what's happening. Like everything is a mess, you know,
Yeah.
on so many on up and down, you know, from the most like horrifying genocidal ways to like the most, you know, mundane ways of but that probably aren't even mundane. Like things are really we're going through this massive change right now in our world, and it's exciting to think about what could happen if we step up to the plate and believe in ourselves and have the bravery and courage to be like, let's change things, you know, and we can do things better and we can do things differently.
Yeah. Love that. Thank you so much. I would love to shift gears now and talk a little bit more about the application of astrology on the individual level. So back to kind of like the birth chart readings. Maybe we can. Thanks for tuning into this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Come back next week for part 2, where we get into birth charts and where Aliza does a birth chart reading for me.